Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I'm so happy to welcome back the great Professor Noam Sivan, and he is really one of the great improvising pianists of today. A really incredible musician, composer, professor, teacher, and he is a professor of piano improvisation at the State University of Music and Performing Arts, Stuttgart. And he opened in 2020 a master's degree in classical piano improvisation, really one of the first programs worldwide. So I'm very thrilled to welcome back to the program Professor Sivan. Welcome back again to the show.
Thank you, Nikhil. Good to be here.
It was really a great time we had on the first conversation. We covered a lot of things, and I think today is especially good because we have video, so people can actually see you. I remember there were some people who were saying the playing was so astonishingly good, but it was all audio. So now we can actually see your hands playing, and so it's going to be a real thrill. We're going to cover a bunch of different styles, and this time we have some actual things that you can walk us through, some real practical examples, which I think will be very thrilling. So first of all, actually, would you want to give an update on the last 2 years and what you've been up to? How is the master's degree program going? And just any updates you have.
Thank you. The master's is going actually very well. We have students from 5 different countries, and there are some high-level pianists who already themselves improvise in concert. Some of them improvise complete piano recitals in different styles. Some of them do complete Baroque suites with 5 or 6 different dances, or complete classical sonatas. Actually, just today, I had some of my students perform on this piano in a lesson. 3 movement sonatas in classical style, romantic fantasies, 20th century, uh, elaborating, using text and music also in freestyle, doing dramatic pieces, collaborations, lots of different things. And this is really going very well. And also, one nice thing about the master's program is that there is a community, that they get to know each other, and that they play for each other and get feedback from each other. And actually, this semester in particular, they all happen to be more in Stuttgart, so there is a really strong relationship between them. So this is going very well. Another thing I just started doing recently, I am now a composer in residence with the Stegreif Orchestra in Berlin, which the name Stegreif in German means improvised. So
Oh, wow.
their name in English is the Improvising Symphony Orchestra, and this is an orchestra that plays classical repertoire but with improvisations. And now I'm going to do a 2 year project with them, developing orchestral improvisation together. So actually improvising together with all the different instruments and creating um, a new production that mixes improvisation with composition, with also aspects of group versus individuals, social interplay, the aspects of a concerto genre, of soloist versus the group, and how that plays out in human relationships. So it's musical and extra musical at the same time. So that's one project that I'm working on. And besides, I just continue doing my own solo improvisation concerts. I just had a couple of those recently, improvisation recitals in which the first half I can play improvisations in different styles, second half maybe one longer continuous improvisation. So doing concerts, master classes, but yeah, I have my own ensemble here in Stuttgart, also interdisciplinary, and exploring improvisation, not only among musicians, but between musicians and artists in other art forms. So I do lots of things, but they are all related to exploring improvisation and creativity.
Right. I had a question which relates to the level of your students. Now, you've been teaching improvisation for a while. Have you noticed that students are the level is rising, or has it like has, because improvisation was quite rare in classical music. You can attest to that. Have you noticed a younger generation coming in with a higher level because the culture has changed over the last couple of decades or years?
Possibly, possibly. There is definitely more interest, and there is also a lot more we need to do in terms of just how we bring it more, how we make it more widespread in concerts, widespread in music education. So I get all kinds of emails from people telling me that I always wanted to improvise and my teachers didn't let me, and now how do I get started? So I have those kinds of things. The people who come to the master's program, they already have experience and they already have some interesting things going on. And of course, they want to deepen their understanding. And they could be mostly pianists or mostly composers. And sometimes they have strong background in music theory, and sometimes they are more performers. It depends. So there can be different things. But in terms of the level rising, possibly. But I think there has to be much more. Then we need to have more programs like this, and there are a couple of more, but we need to have just more improvisation in concerts and more improvisation in education. And of course, I see, like you said, that there is more activity in this area recently. So I do hope that in the future it will be more widespread.
Now, are you a tough teacher? So, like, for instance, I'm wondering because, like, it must be interesting on grading someone in improvisation, because in some senses, improvisation is a creative, personal thing. But, you have to have some sort of way, some metric to say this is good, this is bad. So, and let me, I mean, how do your students, like, when you are working with someone on something like this, are you extremely rigorous in certain aspects? Are you looser in certain other areas?
That really depends on the student and on the specific situation. So the basic approach has to be a welcoming approach, a supportive approach, and you cannot start in any other way. You have to be supportive with whatever the student can do at this moment, and that goes the same for the most advanced and the beginners. You have to start from where the student is at that moment, and then walk step by step. Then, at what point do you become more rigorous? At the point where the student wants to get to a higher level and mentally ready and musically ready for that step. So definitely with the students who already have more confidence, then I would be more attentive to details, because then they appreciate the nuances and they want to learn them. But with students who are still trembling and just trying to find their way of where do I put my fingers, then the most important thing is to encourage flow and for them to be able to play more fluently and to develop their imagination. Because there are two types of learning. There is the learning of the analytic side, of just learning the details and the grammar of the musical language. And then there is the creative side of learning to be imaginative. So I have some students who are very strong analytically, and they already know a lot of things. But then in improvisation, I want them to have a wider expressive range. And then I have students who they just want to improvise and to do very developed things, but then here and there they feel that it's not their best, but they just keep playing. And then I say, okay, let's slow down the process and then let's work on those sections and allow you um, to have more actual information that goes into the improvisation. I think some of those things can be clearer when we look at the specific examples.
Right.
So
Okay. That's a great thing to jump to. Now, I was actually thinking, do you want to maybe set the stage for a little playing Anything you want. Maybe I should just ask you, why don't you play anything right now? Just a couple minutes of just improvisation, and then we'll get into the Baroque and the different styles. But I was just wondering, maybe we should set the tone of the interview with some playing. What do you think?
Okay, sure. Let's just maybe start with a melody. Do you want to sing a melody or to play something? And
You
just
should do it. Why don't I'll leave it to you?
um, so yeah, but maybe you can help me pick the first few notes or something. So
I can give. How about I give you a key? I'll
yeah,
give
sure.
you. Okay, F major. I like F major. And what other information do you need?
So F major and maybe just the first 3 or 4 notes.
Okay. Uh, F, A, B flat, and D.
Okay.
Oh, you are such a musician. Oh, wow. Professor Sivan, I mean, you are such a musician. I mean, it's so hard, so rare for me to say that nowadays to people, but I am that's incredible. Wow. Now, what did you give some now obviously we're not going to spend we can spend the whole hour talking about that, but give us some the audience some general takeaways from what you just did.
Okay. So when we improvise, and this of course falls into, let's say, early romantic style, and we have melody and we have harmony, and then we have, in this particular case, the texture was mostly with the triplets, da 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 da, the whole time. But from in order to be able to do this, yes, you need to do a lot of things with controlling the harmony. To practice just chords and various progressions, various sequences, various all of those kind of things that you have to learn in order to really be fluent with the grammar, so that if I want to modulate to a particular key, or if I want to go in this or that direction harmonically, I don't need to think about it too much, because I also have the melody to think about. So that's from a perspective of harmony. Learning the language is learning a lot about the chord progressions and the possibilities. At first, root position chords, six chords, later modulations, sequences, and then all the other things that you have. Now, with working with a given melody or with a given few notes. So the first thing I have to do is to figure out what kind of rhythm I will use with these notes at the beginning. And I chose to do tam pam 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 pa pa ram. But I can also start. Sorry, which key was it? F major, right? So it is to the same beginning, or I can use the same beginning, and if I want to do it in I don't know. I'm surprised. I'm taking the intervals, and the last thing I played, taking that in first position and the harmonic coloring. So those are about alternative possibilities that I didn't do in the improvisation. But back to the improvisation. So once I have the first phrase, very symmetrical, very square, metrically speaking, and then I did another one, probably this one, just now going to half cadence, and from there. So there are the aspects of the phrase structure. Working with the given few notes, it is important to remain consistent with developing the motive, so that leads to something more cohesive. Very often, people, I work with students, and they start with the motive, but then something else comes up, and then they forget what the initial motive was or how to develop it. So that's why it's important in the beginning of the improvisation to develop the motive so that you can remember it. And
Right.
then, also compositionally, it makes sense because then it gives you coherence to the piece. Of course, the other side of it is that you have at some point to also add additional things so that the piece is not overly obsessive with just this one thing. It works in Beethoven 5, but it doesn't always work. That you use just one thing obsessively, and of course, in Beethoven 5, there are lots of ways in which he makes it work. You
Right.
have the stuff that comes after, right? So taking the initial material and adding something else on top of that. That's
Yeah.
another thing that we can do with this.
Well,
Yeah.
can
So that
I
briefly about the last improvisation. Yeah.
let's go through the material because we actually have a great program to cover today. So you sent me something about different worksheets that you might maybe use with some of your students. Which one would you like to start with first?
Maybe the Baroque Sarabande.
Okay, let me pull that up here. And now, why don't you explain what exactly you use, what this is, and what you use it for?
Okay, so maybe you can zoom in so that we can see, for example, the first three lines. Oh, then we lose something. Yeah, you can start with this. Maybe zoom out a little bit so that we can still see the entire line.
A little bit like this.
I think that's it. Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
So here, what we have is of course, a figured bass. You see the bass and you see the numbers, and the meter is 3/4, and it says Sarabande. So we have 8 measures, repeat, and then another 16 measures and repeat. And then we have the same chord progression in a different key. So the first one G minor, the second one in B minor. Now, when you look at it, you can just play the chords, right? Very simple. It is taken from a real piece of music, but often I don't tell the students which piece, so that do not look up the solution. But it doesn't need to be for a piece. I can just come up with a different progression, of course. I can
Sure.
just slightly different.
Right.
It can be a lot of different things. But anyway, let's start with the progression that's on the page.
Okay.
So what we see 8 measures that start in the tonic and get to a half cadence. So when we say Sarabande, we think, what are different ways in which we can expand the harmonies, elaborate on the harmonies, but then what can we do that would be specific for what we know of a Baroque Sarabande? So if I just think about elaborating the harmonies, I can elaborate notes that belong to the harmony. For now, not worrying so much about the rhythm, just playing. And now I will say, okay, let's now add more passing notes, neighboring notes, also appoggiaturas. And then once you can do this, of course, we can talk about how you connect the different notes, that you're not just playing there's just jumping around, but notes actually resolve somewhere. So the relationships between the consonances and dissonances and so forth, and how you emphasize them, how you play with expression, not just also with expression. And then, okay, Sarabande, so we have 3/4. So at first, I will play quarter notes and eighth notes. 1, 2, 3. So I'm playing quarter notes and eighth notes, and I put them together with the chord progression. Now I have more freedom to add some 16th notes and other rhythms. Repeat. You may notice that in measure 6, I changed the bass a little bit because during the improvisation, I played a pattern in the right hand that invited an F sharp in the right hand at that point, and then I flexibly changed the bass. If I wanted to avoid it, I would do. Instead of. So those are the things that emerge from that. So I may have skipped a few steps in the process now, but this is sort of the step-by-step process of how you get there. And then once you can do that, then another thing you learn to do is to play a different chord progression. Let's say we start the first 4 measures, and instead of going to B flat in measure 4, we go to half cadence. let's say that at the end of measure 8, instead of going to a half cadence, I want to actually modulate to the dominant. And then picker the third. And then second half maybe. Second half maybe starting B flat. Let's say I want to go to C minor. And now, then I have another 8 measures. I need to return. And last 4 measures, finishing. That was mostly a chord reduction. And so you work on improvising the harmonies 4 measures at a time, and then later you can add the elaborations, the additional notes that belong.
Now, I have a question, Professor Sivan. Now, it's clear that you have a vast command of repertoire, that your vocabulary is rich. Did that take years? How did you, I mean, how much is generating ideas from pure theory? Or how much is taking a good idea that you've seen in repertoire and playing around with it?
Very good question. Very good question. There has to be a balance between several different things here. So, yes, knowledge of repertoire is essential for that kind of improvisation, because the improvisation is in a particular language, in a particular cultural reference, we can even say. So the more you know about what composers were doing at the time, then you have a richer language from which you can
I
draw.
ask a specific question? Like, how much Baroque repertoire do you know? Like, just to give a ballpark for someone who has no, like, how much would a great improviser know?
I don't know if it's something that I can answer quantitatively, but it is in my situation. I was always passionate about learning music. But sorry, I now realize that I haven't answered your previous question. I just wanted to put this in context.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sure.
The previous question was finding the balance between what you learn in the repertoire, what you learn about the, let's say, called the grammar of the language, and then the creativity of just being able to create different things.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that also needs to be practiced, to create different versions of the same thing, or to do something differently, or to constantly to not repeat yourself. So that's also an important part of it. But then back to your question about the knowledge. Sorry, one more thing about it, because a lot of people focus on learning and learning the repertoire, learning the theory, but then the creativity also needs to be practiced. So I want to just to emphasize that this should not be ignored. That this is the flow, the creativity, how you develop ideas, how you come up with new ideas, and then you try one version, then another. Now back to the question on repertoire. So I will answer it both for myself and then also for the things that I tell students.
And just to prime that, I read a story that Beethoven could perform the Well-Tempered Clavier by heart or something like that. And so, I mean, imagine someone like you has played so much music that you kind of have you can relate to that.
Definitely that helps to play a lot of repertoire. And yes, it is true. Beethoven learned the Well-Tempered Clavier as a child. His teacher emphasized that, and that definitely helped a lot. Also, it is known that Chopin was practicing Well-Tempered Clavier before his concerts. But anyway, back to my own path. I was always passionate about learning music, and I always wanted to learn more and to get to know more repertoire, listening, reading scores, playing things at the piano. So when I was studying at first piano with my mother, I looked at, okay, what music do we have on the shelf, and I was just starting to read, to get to know the different sonatas, different pieces that the composers were writing, and later I was interested in string quartets. So I took from the library the scores for string quartets, and then symphonic repertoire, and went to concerts. And so just the process of learning more, and a lot, not just listening, but also reading the scores and getting to know the pieces and thinking about questions. For example, if the thing that we just talked about, the harmony, which keys does the composer modulate to? What happens with the chromatic notes? What happens with the structure? So always asking questions about those things. And then, of course, I was also a student officially in different programs. So I took classes and all of that. But I think it comes from really the passion to learn music. And I really wanted to learn music to the end, to understand everything I could about how it works. And in lots of styles and new music also. I was living in New York, and in my 20s, I went to the opera all the time, and I went to new music concerts, and and then I kept getting to know the symphonic repertoire, just learning a lot. And that was even before I did improvisation in the way I do it today. That is, today it's really central to my activities, but that took a while. I was a pianist, I was a composer. But then when I started doing improvisation, then all the other things inform the improvisation.
Right.
So it is the knowledge of the repertoire and the study of music theory and the study as a composer, writing operas and string quartets and for orchestra and for the different instruments. That was very helpful when I started teaching improvisation for all the different instruments, and also the compositional mindset in improvisation. So to be
Right.
a composer, I've written 50 or 60 pieces that are fully written and have nothing for improvisation in them, but that helped. And of course, as a pianist, to play the repertoire. So all of those things then inform the improvisation. And this is, of course, other people have other ways of doing things, but at least in my own experience, I found that it absolutely helps to experience music from those different angles, so that it informs the improvisation. And then for my students, what I tell them, you want to improvise a Sarabande, look at the repertoire, play harmonic reductions, look at this, look at that, do all of those things, and then learn what happens with the melodic patterns, with the harmonic patterns, with all of those different things. So this is how you do that particular genre. But even before you do a particular genre, you have to learn the language grammatically. Chords, melodies, there is no way around it. There are no
Do
shortcuts.
you get students who come to you with pretty, I guess, modern harmony understanding, Roman numeral analysis, function theory? Does that assist in improvisation? What's your opinion on that?
You and I talked about it before, that Roman numerals, you know very well that they became important after Bach and Mozart had written their compositions, and they work very well when you look at late 19th century music, and then you get to Riemann and function theory and all of that. So of course you can analyze Bach and Mozart with Roman numerals, but and to some extent it does help, but only in a rudimentary way. And you know very well that thinking from the bass, so when you have a chord, fa, la, re, then that chord is a sixth chord on the bass, and then that allows the bass to be more stepwise. So if I just think, oh, this is an inversion of D, and then I think in terms of root position, then you have the music becomes more heavy-handed because it's just root position chords, and instead of chord inversions, a lot of 6/4/2 chords, a lot of 6/3 chords, a lot of and okay, I also played secondary dominants, but I could do the same entirely diatonically. That was entirely diatonic in F major, but then it uses 6 chords, and so you recognize a lot of sequences. Sequences go up and down, and those kinds of things. So you cannot do that with Roman numerals. You have to do it with figured bass. For Baudon, 6 chords going up, sequence of those kind of things going down. So all of those things, you have to do it with thinking from the bass,
Okay.
and that's figured bass. So now Roman numerals, yes, we learned them, we know about them, and they, especially with understanding the basic functions, tonic, subdominant, and dominant, deceptive cadence, mediant, secondary dominant, some of those things. This is the extent of where they can be helpful, but I would not start doing, I don't know, if I have this chord, let's say, I would rather think about this contrapuntally than say, well, this is actually F major 7th chord in 4/3 inversion. Unhelpful, really, because this is it's much better explained in contrapuntal terms and in terms of feelings. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe
Great.
should we go to different musical style, improvise something?
Sure.
Maybe
So we
I'll,
just did Baroque, right? Should we go into what would you like to do?
yeah, we could maybe, I don't know, could do classical, romantic,
Yeah, let's do classical then. Let's go to the next era.
classical style. So I will take the notes that you gave me before.
Okay.
Let's transpose them up to F sharp major, and let's do something in the classical style. 3/4 tempo diminuendo.
wonderful stuff. And I just have to marvel. I mean, I wonder, like, I always am fascinated. What are you thinking when that is going on? I mean, that is I have to know what is the thought process. And you've been elaborating it while we were talking. And since that was a little bit more fleshed out than the other one, because it was a little bit longer, more substantive, do you want to just talk about some of the things that you did in this one compared to the first improvisation that you did?
Okay, so so my mindset was okay, classical style. So I thought I can start with what could be unison, forte, and now thinking about it, the rhythm of this opening. You talked about the relationship to repertoire. Um, I didn't think about it when I played, but now reflecting on it, it reminds me a Mozart string quartet. How does it go? Um, gentlemen. Like this, yes. So forth. So it's Mozart K387, string quartet, second movement, the trio of the minuet. So talking about repertoire, yes. So maybe that was in the back of my mind, and I thought, okay, unison opening, and of course this is G minor, and I played in the major key, so there's this difference. But having that kind of forte opening, and I even thought about more like an orchestral unison in that style.
Right.
And then what goes on in my mind, really, where does the music need to go? Where does it need to go in this moment? And it goes on very quickly. Like I said before, the because if I could sort of break the process, sometimes you need to think about the harmony, sometimes you need to think about the melody, and sometimes you need to think about the texture or the form or those things. So if I play, for example, the same pattern in one hand, I can think about the harmony. So if I play this, so I can focus on the harmony because there is not much happening in other ways.
Right.
The same thing. But if I want to focus on the melody, so definitely the focus is much more on what's happening in the right hand, and
Mm.
then the harmony was mostly parallel 6/3 chords with the occasional secondary dominance and things like that. So
Okay.
harmonically, it wasn't very adventurous, but melodically, I was able to focus on what's happening there. So in different moments, you can focus on different things, and then knowing about, for example, form as a whole. I started in the home key, and then I said, okay, I need to get to some kind of arrival in a dominant key. Then I had a second theme, and I forgot exactly how it continued, but it went on, and then at some point, oh, do I need to come back? Recapitulation, coming back to the home key. So some aspects of form. But in the practicing process, and definitely with working with students, so we separate the elements. We say, now let's do just the harmonic reduction of the opening. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. then you continue. Yeah, so
I,
you can do that. Or you can just do melody with bass. Yeah? Or you can just do melody alone. Practicing in unison. Lots of different things you can do. Two voices, one voice, chord reduction. You can break it. You can break the process in so many different ways in terms of what's being played at that
right,
moment, in terms of the length of the section you're working on, just 8 measures or just something.
right. Do you have a recommendation for beginners to learn chords like figured bass? Do you have like some people like Fenaroli, some people like Dondrieu, some people like there's some books in Germany that have been published. I think about I think Leonard Schick mentioned there was a professor who published something. Do you have a text that you like to use as a reference for learning chords, positions? Just really getting good fundamentals.
Yeah, I recommend for me, really one of the best is the Handel Continuo
Mm,
treatise because it is so musical. And Handel was, of course, an excellent composer in his own right. And he starts with root position chords, then goes to 6 chords, and then some others. And then this, of course, has been published and analyzed. And the so this is one collection that I recommend. The last chapter of Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach from his essay, when he talks about improvisation, you have the rule of the octave going up and down in different ways, and then modulations from C major to all the keys. That's good after you already know some figured bass, because he doesn't. You
mm.
have to read the earlier chapters.
Now that
Also,
chapter is so dense. How do you teach people to learn all the rules in thorough bass?
well, okay, so I mentioned Handel,
Yeah.
and maybe let's put C.P. Bach in the aside for a moment, and then Hermann Keller, thorough bass. I'm sure you know about this. The first chapter, he goes just explaining all the numbers, and he gives you some sequences, and he gives some modulations. Now, of course, Fenaroli is also good, and lots of other materials are. So for learning figured bass, you have a lot of options.
Okay.
I don't think this is a problem. The question is, what do you do with what you learn?
Yep.
The question is, how do you take that and you start improvising melodic material with
Mm,
this? And then how do you develop your imagination so that you can go in different ways? So
right.
figure based, but I use Handel a lot, and Handel has the regular exercises and then the fugues. And then CPE Bach, once you do the other things and you know how to play figure bass, then CPE Bach is good because it shows you different options for rule of the octaval operations. Then you have pedal points. Then you have, for example, just as an example, he says, if you want to go from C major to G major, he says, you can do this. Then you can do this. And this is... the same chord with F sharp, you can have different inversions, and he shows you all 4 or 5 different possibilities. And then when you learn about this, you can practice modulation to the dominant in so many different ways.
Great.
So
Great.
when I teach modulation to the dominant, we do this, for example. Again. Now again, modulation to another key. So you have to start with the same starting point in modulate different places.
That's wonderful. No, we look at the time. The time's just been flying. We haven't even gone to the romantic. I would love to get to the romantic. So there's something you talked about sample textures in the romantic style.
Yeah, you can look at that. You
Okay,
can
let's
look at that.
let's bring that one up. Okay, so explain what these textures are. Oh,
So
should I zoom in a bit?
if you take, for example, the first and second lines are the same music. If you can see the first one. Okay, so this is more advanced. So if you already know your chords and you already know what to do with chords and melody, then we say how many different versions do you have? You could do this. So you can just keep improvising if you know what to do here. And then let's go to the bottom, the texture, the last one on that page. Here, the chords. So, think about the kind of things that Mendelssohn does, some without words, different possibilities. So you could have those kinds of textures. And then when later you see what are the kind of things that, I don't know, lists might do. If I just take this opening, so forth. So
Whew,
you could have a lot of
incredible
different,
stuff. You are the
a lot,
master.
thank you. A lot of different textures in the romantic style. And now, of course, I went very quickly through things.
But
Each
there's a
one of the
lot of okay. So wait a second. That technique was sensational. Do you need to do a lot of like Czerny etudes, list etudes to? Because obviously the diminutions. I mean, your fingers are flying. Do you have to get used to that kind of those kinds of exercises to move like that?
Okay, do you know how Franz Liszt practiced?
Let
So
me know.
he practiced because he really invented the piano recital in the 1830s, and he practiced scales and arpeggios and octaves and chords like everyone else, but he also practiced them in applying them to improvisational patterns, so that it is not just playing the scales like this, not like this, but also playing. So that you practice, and of course you can do this slowly. And after you learn chords and you learn more about harmony, and but then you can use that in your practicing in technique, and then that helps with later applying it in a context which is, let's say, more charged emotionally in certain
Okay,
cases.
I have to ask you, what is your recommendation to get sensational technique? What exercises, what repertoire, what do you say? And now we're just talking technique, like pianistic kind of virtuosic sort of technique. What's your advice in that area?
Are you talking about technique for written music or for improvisation?
Oh, both. I mean, just like where do you get that? I mean, like, do you? Because I could see sometimes I see Czerny etudes, Chopin etudes, Liszt etudes. There's a certain way that it's just so covering the keyboard. So I was just wondering, like, what do you recommend in terms of like things to play?
Well, of course, you definitely learning these etudes helps you. But as I said, if you want to learn to do this for improvisation,
Hmm.
it is not enough just to learn the etudes, but you also have to learn the harmonic grammar of the style, and then to connect between melodic material and harmony. So you learn melody, you learn harmony, and you learn melody and harmony together. When I say melody, melodic material, it's not just melody, but also melodic material. Yeah, 16 notes, triplets, 8 notes, faster material
Mm.
that moves with stepwise motion. So you have to learn those things as separate exercises. And if you, let's say, you practice, you did all the figure bass. um, so you did your exercises from those different things, and then you practice playing chords and modulations and sequences and all of those. Then you can apply this in a particular genre. For example, in Baroque style, you can do Baroque genres, preludes, sarabands. In Romantic style, you can do song without words, for example, things like that. And then if you want to get to the point where it's more virtuosic and covering the full range of the keyboard, you can practice those things slowly. As an example, if I just take those 4 chords and just take those chords and elaborate them. You can take a single harmony, and then think, okay, what are the passing notes, the neighboring notes, the things that connect
Right.
um, here and there. So all of this can be studied in a methodical way, but it requires time, and it
Mm.
requires spending the hours and doing this and enjoying the process. You have
Well,
to enjoy the process.
well,
Can we
since
do some 20th century stuff before we finish?
absolutely. Why didn't so we had early 20th century? I we Is there pentatonic modulations,
Let's
tonal
start with it.
improvisation?
Yeah, let's look at
Okay.
that.
Okay, so let me bring that up here and take it away. So
Yeah.
what is this?
Here, if you see the notes that appear, so it's written 5 notes, and then on the same note, we can move and modulate to something else. So if I improvise with this. I will continue playing.
brilliant. You are the master. What a master. Oh, man. Incredible.
Thank
That is
you.
so good. Okay. I mean, well, I mean, I'm speechless. What do I have? What am I going to say to that? It's just so good. So good. Maybe, okay. So we had come out of figured bass and into something new here. So is there any remnant of the figure based thinking, or are you really having you have a different thinking here?
The thinking here is less about major and minor keys and more about modal approach to key signatures and collections of notes. So the example we had on the page was when we start with this, there's 5 notes. This is pentatonic, of course. And then with a common tone, we have a different pentatonic. And this is how you can move between them. And then once I'm here, I can add the additional 2 notes to keep it. Yeah. So I can turn it into a 7-note mode or skill. And what helps me to prevent it from being, let's say, A flat major, but are the chord structures that I'm using, which can derive from pentatonic. Then they can be derived later from what else did they use? I think I used the note collection that can be called harmonic minor, but it's not used as such. Of course, later you can turn it into octatonic. Whole step, half step alternation. You can also invent your own modes. You can. Sorry, just a moment. These are just 5 notes. Now I change. And then if I want it to be fully chromatic, so the path from thinking about the mode to using all 12 pitches it really depends on how you want to control it. And for me, this is one of the beautiful things about improvisation is that you can create transition between different harmonic languages.
Mm.
If you make the transition gradual enough, you can carry the listener through this journey of just starting in one place and then you can start very diatonic. For example, I start now I changing only one note. So you can immediately turn it into something which is much more dense, and vice versa. You can filter the chromatics away and then bring it back to the. You can return it to something which has more clarity to it. So this is possible. Of course, this is really, really just yeah, a little bit of a huge topic.
Yeah,
Of
and I mean we didn't get. I mean, like it's so fascinating because uh
huge topic, 20th and 21st century music and the kinds of possibilities that you have. But I will just say that for me, it is really fascinating to explore being multilingual in music. so that it is this is the times that we live in. You said, okay, there is this um, um, improvisation, resurgence of improvisation, people doing more and more of it, and now we can also do improvisation in lots of different ways. Um, whereas for many years people thought, okay, improvisation, jazz. So there was this
Exactly.
close link, and of course, wonderful tradition of jazz improvisation for now well over 100 years. And if we think about the classical music tradition of, let's say, I don't know, hundreds of years of repertoire, then a lot of improvisation can come out of that, and which can be 18th century or 19th century or 20th century, of course, 16th century also, we didn't touch it, but lots of different things, and up to 21st century. So all of those things are possible in improvisation.
Well, to end off, Professor Sivan, I mean, I think you are such a masterful teacher and player and improviser. Maybe we can ask a big question, which is, um, what does improvisation mean to you as a musician? Is it a skill everyone should have? Is it a skill that has a purpose, uh, obviously for performance, but does it help you in your composing? Should a composer know how to improvise at an instrument? I mean, these seem like obvious questions, but I mean, I'd love to get your take on this. I mean, what is the importance of improvisation for a musician and the purpose of it?
Okay, so I first of all I want to dispel a myth here that people can listen to it and say, "Oh, I don't know if I will be able to do this," and sometimes people have those reactions. I do believe that anyone can improvise, and anyone can start improvising, and even anyone can enjoy the process of learning improvisation step by step. And I have seen this also with my own children. So I have three children, and I started teaching them improvisation when they started learning musical instruments with the few notes that they could play. So you can just improvise with just one note or two notes, and then it grows from there. And it is possible. And even when you are, let's say, in your 20s and 30s or 40s or 50s, and in any age, and you want to start improvising, you can do it. And it is important to be positive about the process and not compare yourself to someone who's already more advanced, but to really focus on what am I doing today that is possibly different from what I did yesterday. So that's the
Right.
comparison in the learning process with short and manageable exercises. That's about the process. Then about the benefits. So many benefits for a musician. It connects the ear and the mind and the fingers. We talked today about piano improvisation, but also with melodic instruments, whether you play the flute or whether you play the French horn or the double bass or any instrument or the marimba, any instrument that you play, you can learn to create melodic material, and so you can improvise 3-minute pieces, 5-minute pieces, and you can also improvise in relation to a chord progression, improvising variations. It helps you to listen melodically, to listen harmonically, to develop the ear, to play by ear, which a lot of classical musicians are struggling with, playing just what's written. To play by ear, to be able to do that, and to think compositionally, to understand how music is put together. Then when you look at written music, you understand better what the composer was thinking, writing the notes there. It's not just, it didn't just arrive from heaven and it's there. People were writing it. Those people were improvising. They were improvisers in those times. So definitely for performers, a big benefit. Stage fright, dealing with stage presence, confidence, learning not to be afraid of the instrument, that you don't need just to put something in front of you to be able to play. You can harmonize songs. You can play. You can create little pieces. Just so many things that you can do. And for me, it's also about creativity. That we learn to be creative, and creativity is an important value in life. Then for composers, composition and improvisation are two different ways of creating music. In composition, the structure is very strong. In improvisation, the flow is very strong. So when you are a composer, composers are working very hard trying to create pieces that have a natural flow, that sound seamless, that they just move naturally from one moment to another. And you sit at the desk and you work hard to try to create that feeling. Then, when you practice improvisation, you practice that aspect of composition. So, definitely, it helps with getting a sense of the overview, if getting a sense of the direction. I just talked about transitions, learning how to do transitions, and also when you improvise with other people, there is the aspect of composition and group playing. So I think it is yeah, immensely beneficial for musicians. And I will also say that for audiences, witnessing an improvised performance is a special experience because you do not only listen to the music, you also listen to the process of this being created. And that highlights what a live performance is.
Brilliant. I mean, well put. I mean, so well put. And you're a great exponent. And I think so many people are inspired by your model and your example. To end off, Professor Sivan, do you want to plug anything? Do you want to mention things? We talked about your master's program. Is there anything you'd like to mention for my audience to take away at the end of this interview?
So, yes, the master's program is for those who are serious about improvisation and want to take it to a high level, to perform it, to teach it, to be really ambassadors of improvisation. And some of my students are already doing it, taking it to different countries to do various concert activities and teaching activities. And I would also say that as a culture, we should also welcome improvisation in various forms to be able to include it in concerts today. Some presenters think, well, I don't know if we should have an improvisation concert. Is it classical music? Is it not? Is it jazz? Is it this? Is it that? So there is sometimes a hesitation. Will the audience understand what the music is about? Should we just put a Beethoven sonata and that's it? And so, what I would say is that it has enormous potential for enriching the culture. We're not only preserving the heritage that we inherited in terms of the works of the past, and not only performing music that is being written today, but through improvisation, we connect between all the different facets of improvisation. I will just actually end with something. um, I was giving a masterclass in Berlin a couple of days ago, and one of the students she said, you know, this is really where everything comes together. This is the ultimate challenge. And I want to be able to do this because this is, everything you learn about music comes into what you do with it. And interestingly, they understood it in the 18th century, not
Mhm.
only when kings asked Mozart to improvise on given tunes, but also when they were doing auditions. There was a story of a young flutist coming to play for C.P.E. Bach, and he said, okay, I would like you to improvise your own fantasy. So it was really normal in those times. This is what you test musicians on. And it was unthinkable for them to say, okay, play something you practice for 2 months. But it is- why, everyone can do it. You practice it. So that was a completely different mindset
Right.
back then, 250 years ago. And of course, we have learned tremendous amount from practicing and refining. And
Mhm.
to the present day, and I teach it, and it's beautiful. But we should bring back some of this approach of just everything is getting into that point of improvisation, really encapsulating so much of what we do as musicians, and we can definitely celebrate that process in our concert life and in music education and in our experience of what music is about.
I mean, just excellently put. I mean, the master, Professor Noam Sivan. I mean, like, what can I say? This guy is one of the best. I mean, so what can I say? I mean, amazing, amazing. Thank you for all
Thank you.
your hard work in this endeavor, pushing the culture. You're certainly having an effect, and I hope that I mean, I wish I knew about you when I was a young student. I mean, that would have changed my whole trajectory. Would have just changed everything. It would have changed everything. And I hope maybe there's a young person out there who's watching this and can say like, yeah, that guy's that's it. And see, it can be done. It can be done. I certainly remember that when I was learning jazz in a jazz contemporary school, there was always this there was always this imperfect way of taking like the jazz approach and trying to put it on classical music, and it sort of worked. It just didn't quite get it. And now I know that there's all these practitioners out there, and you being one of the best who know how to do it in a systematic way. And I just hope that more people just find you and find your work. So, Professor Noam Sivan, thank you for being on the show. You have to come back again, please. And let's not make it too long next time, okay?
Sure, sure. Thank you very much. My pleasure.